UA.A.K2, and this is the code for the definitions used in 14 CFR Part 107. By the way, whenever you see 14 CFR, that just means the 14th chapter of the Code of Federal Regulations. In other words, FAR Part 107. Okay, and this is the section again. It's about definitions, and these definitions are actually covered in Part 107.3. And these are the definitions that are specific to this code, and there's a handful of them that are specifically listed that you need to know. One of them is the control station, then corrective lenses, then declaration of compliance, then small unmanned aircraft, small unmanned aircraft systems, unmanned aircraft, visual observer. All right, those specifically are the definitions that are part of that particular code and that you need to know for the test. So let's go through these one by one. First of all, the control station. What is that? A control station is an interface used by the remote pilot to control the flight path of the small unmanned aircraft. Or in other words, this is your controller. You can call it your remote controller. We all know what this is. This is the little box with the little knobs on it that you use to fly the aircraft. The FAA has a very specific word that it uses for that, and that is the control station. The next one, corrective lenses. Again, these are fairly straightforward. These are spectacles, or glasses as the rest of us call them, spectacles or contact lenses. All right, the next one is declaration of compliance. And a declaration of compliance, it's a record submitted to the FAA that certifies that the small unmanned aircraft conforms to the Category 2 or Category 3 requirements under Subpart D of this section. Now, what that actually means when it talks about Category 2 and Category 3 under Subpart D, that is the section that talks about aircraft flying your drone over people. And the drones that are allowed to fly over people, they have to fall into one of four different categories. I'm not going to go into the details on that because those are actually covered under a totally different set of codes. Um, but for category two and category three, the aircraft has to. They talk about something of a declaration of compliance, and that's what this is. A declaration of compliance is a record submitted to the FAA that certifies that the small unmanned aircraft conforms to category two or category three requirements. All right, small unmanned aircraft. Okay, these are our drones, but again, there's a very specific definition. And a small unmanned aircraft is an unmanned aircraft weighing less than 55 pounds on takeoff, including everything that is on board or otherwise attached to the aircraft. So it's the aircraft plus any cameras or, again, whatever is on board when it's in the air, less than 55 pounds makes it a small unmanned aircraft. That's important because sometimes they will try and trick you and say 55 pounds or less. That would be incorrect. It is less than 55 pounds. So at 55 pounds and above, it is no longer a small unmanned aircraft. To be a small unmanned aircraft, it has to be less than 55 pounds. Okay. The next one is small unmanned aircraft systems. And this is the small unmanned aircraft and its associated elements. So here we're talking about the aircraft, we're talking about the controller or the control station to use FAA terms. If there is any other equipment that you need to use in order to operate this aircraft, all of that put together is what is considered the small unmanned aircraft system. And so this is, again, it includes all the communication links and the components that control the aircraft, everything that's required for safe and efficient operation of the small unmanned aircraft in the National Airspace System. Again, so this is the entire setup, the drone, the controller, everything. All right, the next one is an unmanned aircraft. Now, an unmanned aircraft is an aircraft, just it's pretty self-explanatory from the term, but an aircraft operated without the possibility of direct human intervention from within or on the aircraft. So, if you remember a second ago, we were talking about small unmanned aircraft is weight specific. It is less than 55 pounds. An unmanned aircraft simply refers to any aircraft that is operated without the possibility of direct human intervention from within or on the aircraft. All right, the next term is a visual observer. And a visual observer is a person who's designated by the remote piloting command to assist the remote piloting command and the person manipulating the flight controls of the small UAS to see and avoid other air traffic or objects aloft or on the ground. And those are the definitions that this particular code requires you to know for the FAA exam.